Do you want to expand on the concept of health span and why you distinguish between that and longevity per se?
Yeah, longevity is really a function of lifespan and health span. So lifespan is the easier of those two to understand because it's binary. You're either alive or you're dead. And I think when most people think of longevity, they think of the elongation of lifespan, understandably. But, that's really only part of it. The other part, the part that might actually be more important to most people when pressed on the issue is health span, which is the quality of life. And the medical definition of health span is not a particularly helpful definition in my view. It's effectively the period of time from which you are free of disability and disease. But I don't really think that captures what health span is to most people. And so I think health span is a broader concept, and it's not binary. It is analog, but it really constitutes some measure of cognitive health, physical health, and emotional health. And at least two of those are intimately linked to age, which is to say they generally decline with age. But if we focus, I think, relentlessly on the pursuit of those things, we tend to get a better quality of life overall. And by the way, I think you get for free a lot of lifespan benefits.
Right. So, it's very important to get the definitions and the measurements right because systems optimize to maximize their score on what they're measured by. And I suppose living to 140 wouldn't be so good if you were senile for the last 70 years and institutionalized, for example. And so it sounds like when you talk about health span, you're intermingling two quality of life issues. One would be the expansion of youth rather than longevity per se, and then something associated with the existential quality of life. So maybe we could start with, does that seem to capture, the interaction of those two things seem to capture what you're talking about with regard to health span?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the cognitive and physical piece are the pieces that do decline with age, and we want to preserve those as long as possible. And we can be very specific about what those things are, by the way, right? We could drill into what is cognitive health span, what is physical health span. And then that other one that is not so age dependent might be at least as important and probably, frankly, falls much more into your wheelhouse than mine, professionally at least, and that is about the quality of a person's life and the quality of their relationships, their sense of purpose, and things of that nature.
The content I've created over the past year represents some of my best to date, as I've undertaken additional extensive exploration in today's most challenging topics and experienced a nice increment in production quality, courtesy of Daily Wire Plus. We all want you to benefit from the knowledge gained throughout this adventurous journey. I'm pleased to let you know that for a limited time, you're invited to access all my content with a 7-day free trial at Daily Wire Plus. This will provide you with full access to my new in-depth series on marriage, as well as guidance for creating a life vision, and my series exploring the book of Exodus. You'll also find there the complete library of all my podcasts and lectures. I have a plethora of new content in development that will be coming soon exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Voices of reason and resistance are few and far between these strange days. Click on the link below if you want to learn more. And thank you for watching and listening. Yeah, so a long while back, I was looking at interventions to improve people's lives. And I knew at that point that cognitive decline was a major problem, especially in terms of, productivity and general competence. And so it's a pretty pronounced linear downhill trend on the fluid intelligence front from about the age of 25 forward. And that can decline precipitously in, say, late 70s, early 80s, especially with the onset of degenerative neurological diseases. And I was looking at the literature on cognitive remediation. This is back in the times about 10, 15 years ago, when there were a lot of online sites that purported to run you through cognitive exercises that could increase or maintain your IQ. There's never been any evidence for that, by the way. It's a pretty damn dismal literature. But what I did find, and I think this is extremely solid, is that if you want to maintain your cognitive function, that both cardiovascular exercise and weightlifting seem to do a pretty damn good job. And maybe that's because the brain is such a oxygen demanding organ, and other obviously it's energy demanding and resource demanding in other ways. And if you can keep yourself cardiovascularly fit, interestingly enough, that's the best pathway to cognitive health. Then I was looking on the psychological side, and what I found was that there were interventions that help people get their story straight. Of course, psychotherapy is one of those, but there are written interventions. If people write about their past traumas, and if they write about their future plans, they reduce general uncertainty. That reduces their stress, and that seems to produce a relatively pronounced physiological benefit. And so there's an interesting interplay there that we can talk about more in terms of the emotional and the physical. It's pretty funny that if you want to improve your cognitive function or maintain it, you should exercise rather than think. And that if you want to improve your physiology, you should straighten out your story and face your traumas rather than, say, exercise. So what do you recommend in your book, in Outlive in particular, with regard to the expansion of health span? What do you think, and how do you practice this personally? What do you recommend to people?
So I think that exercise is empirically the most valuable tool we have for both the cognitive and physical components. So let's start with the cognitive, because I think here it was less intuitive. So about 10 years ago, when I really went down this rabbit hole, I had one of my research analysts spend a lot of time going through the literature. So we created a framework where we were going to look at every single intervention and how it impacted executive function, processing speed, short-term memory, long-term memory. Those were the 4 metrics we cared about, because as you point out, those are all bits of intelligence that decline with age. So, we looked at everything. Okay, so we looked at every molecule, we looked at every possible thing that you could think of. And after about 9 months of this, the thing that stood out above all else, beyond any diet, beyond the importance of sleep and other things that certainly mattered, controlling blood pressure, lipids, et cetera, was exercise. And I even though I was a lifelong exerciser and loved to exercise, I just couldn't believe it. It seemed so trite that exercise could have such a profound difference on the state of cognition, not just in terms of its performance as effectively a nootropic, but also in its ability to delay, if not outright prevent, dementia. So once we dug into the mechanisms, I think it became clear why exercise is so potent. And it's basically that it is acting on so many different levels. So as you pointed out, it's acting at a metabolic level. The brain is such an energy demanding organ. As you know, and maybe your listeners do, it weighs about 2% of your body weight, and it's responsible for 20 to 25% of your energy consumption. So therefore, anything that disrupts that is catastrophic. So when you look at the improvements in glucose disposal, insulin sensitivity, and all metabolic parameters, exercise is the most important tool we have there. When you look at the reduction of inflammation, vascular health improvements, again, exercise stands alone. When you look at the production of neurotropic growth factors such as BDNF, again, exercise is basically a drug for neurons. And so I think I eventually came around after a year or so to realize that, again, as simple as it sounds, exercise is such a potent tool. And you look at the brains of people who exercise a lot, and you can see far less damage, not just microvascularly, but in terms of brain volume loss over time.